Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look. Well, hello everyone. We've got, thank you for listening. We got a problem, I guess, with Larry. He was on here, but just got thrown off, which is happening far more than it actually should. Oh, here he comes. He's back on again. Hi, Larry. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm back, Stuart. I got thrown out of the queue. I don't know what happened. It just throwed me out as the show started.
Well, they don't like you, and they don't like me, and they don't like anything that's conservative anymore. We are watching, I'm firmly convinced, the final apex of a communist coup. I guess the only question we have is, are they going to be successful or not? What do you think? Everything that's going on is by the playbook of a communist coup.
Yeah, that's exactly what Mike Huckabee said a couple of days ago. He announced that we were watching a communist coup against the President of the United States. And then Rick Wiles put out a radio show today. He entitled it, "The Communist Revolution Has Started in America." And we're seeing more and more that are beginning to use this same terminology. And also... they're planning large marches, I think, starting tomorrow, this weekend, across the country. This may be the beginning, really, of the real summer of discontent, and I find it odd that we're having weather down here that is like fall and going into winter. And so, it makes me wonder, really, where all this is coming from. Everything seems topsy-turvy.
Well, of course, in the Book of Enoch, it talked about how I think it's chapter 79, and it talks about how the seasons get all confused. The leaves are already turning here on some of the trees. We've got both red leaves and we've got yellow. And this is really early for any of that to be going on. In fact, the grasses were kind of turning that purple-pink color that they do usually in September, October, somewhere in there. But it's all turned already. So there's a lot going on in earth changes. Larry's gone again. Let me see if he'll come back. Wow. Here he is. Okay, you back?
I hope I'm back, Stuart. That's the second time in just a few minutes I've been thrown out of the queue. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I don't either. I mean, the glitches are getting to the point where, and some of it's probably electromagnetic as well. Where do you want to start on this? Let's maybe go with the Bannon dismissal. Bannon was basically the last of the nationalists, was he not?
Well, I think you're right, Stuart, and this is what's interesting today. He made the statement today that this is the end of the Trump presidency. And I think I've heard some people talking about that today, and they seem to be indicating that he is announcing that so many of the deep state now surround Trump. They've got him pinned in, and, of course, we know the coup is in progress, and they'll hold him in that box until, they can completely get him out of office. We're in a terrible time in this country, Stuart. We've got a communist coup operating in our face, involving every portion of our own government, and the American people seem to continually sit on the couch.
Well, did Bannon himself say that, or that the presidency was about through?
That's exactly what Bannon said. He said this is the end of the Trump presidency, and also, we talked about the Drudge headlines. Let me just read them real quick. Newt Gingrich sounds alarm in USA. Newt says presidency at risk now. Pat Buchanan says America divided deeply. Congress just 6 votes away from impeaching Trump. America's race crisis, everyday media news. And this goes on and on and on and on. We got a coup operating in the face of the American people, and it's all the above. It's not only the communists really have become the Democrats and the Republicans and the deep state and the left and the right.
Yeah, I noticed too that some of the congressmen are siding with what they call Antifa, I guess. But Antifa is a communist operation. It's not. It's pure communism.
Yeah, that's one of those duh moments for the American people. It's when you say duh, and the American people try to figure out what you just meant.
Yeah. Well, when you've got an apostate, it doesn't even. I'm not even talking scripture. They're apostate from their Constitution. They're getting more, and they've gone into schools, and they've changed the history books, and now they're toppling statues, attempting to change history that way or get rid of it. They are then will be moving. I'm a firm believer. They will move into book burning and killing people, because this is the way the communists have always operated. And a lot of these organizations with different names are all communist. Most of them funded by George Soros, who vowed he was going to get rid of the United States, that he was going to topple it. And I don't see any movement to take out George Soros. I mean, he's an enemy of the United States. He's no different than Ben Laden, if you want to believe the hoopla around Osama bin Laden. Insiders said that Ben Laden died long ago from a medical condition. So I don't know who they took out when they went over there theoretically and under Obama and took out somebody called that. So you really don't know who to believe, because you got so many different stories, so many different things going on. But they're toppling statues all over, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, Stuart, now they've begun to bring down statues of judges across the country. This is really gone across the line into an area that Trump warned about. You remember he said Washington and Thomas Jefferson, are they next? Where do they stop? Well, they're not going to stop, Stuart. And if the American people watch about another week's of television, they're going to see them removing judges.
Yes.
You name it. What's odd, Bill Koenig, he has watch.org, and
yes,
he follows a lot of this. And he recently wrote a new book. I posted, I think, yesterday or today. It says, and the name of the book's Revealed, Obama's Legacy. And he makes the statement in his book. He said, Obama's legacy, he says, is America recoverable? And he said, life in America after Obama will never be the same. And this is what's interesting, Stuart. You and I have talked, and I believe that at the moment they would bring Obama right back in and put him as leader of this nation if it were possible. And, well, maybe it is before they're through.
Oh, I think they'll make it possible. All they got to do is pass legislation. What's the difference, actually, between a dictator and a runaway Congress? Runaway Congress is dictator at that point. So, yes, they could have special session, allow a third run for Obama, and immediately put him into power. Or Hillary, for that matter. Or both. That'd be a wonderful thing for the American people. But this, in 1933, paramilitary wing of the Communist Party in Germany had a flag. It is exactly like Antifa today. They are communists. And we're being set up, and the American people are sitting back watching a communist coup in their nation. I guess my only question, and I'd like your opinion on it too, is how long do you think Trump can last? If he's in here as Cyrus, as many believe he is, the Lord's hand is upon him, he's got some work to do for Israel. Yet.
Well, I think that's the interesting point. And the interesting thing is, there's been a number of experts that have already said, and Augusto Perez is one of them. He saw the Cuban coup of Batista by the Castros, and he said this is exactly the very same thing. And you remember a couple of months ago, Augusto made the remark that if Trump continues to coddle and allow them free run and free reign, Obama, Clinton, and all their peoples and Soros's peoples, he said he won't last. He said, I give him a couple or 3 or 4 months. He said he will not last. He said that's how they brought down Batista, because he didn't crack down on the coup that was occurring in their face. And matter of fact, True News Radio had a post on today, said media research founder Brent Bozell, and I've heard him, he knows what he's talking about, warns U.S. media is rallying Americans against President Donald J. Trump. It's a coup, and it's unprecedented in modern American history. And what we're watching, Stuart, is absolutely a communist socialist coup in our face. And, I'll tell you what, Stuart, and I'd like your opinion on this. I think any other time I would be really concerned to the degree I couldn't even think. However, there's that term, however, because of the knowledge of these critical 2 dates coming up, August 21st, the eclipse across America, and what we call, or I do especially, the pivot point of 9/23/2017, I think we're right on time.
Yeah, it does seem odd, doesn't it, that all of this is suddenly taking place, and a lot more can take place in a month or more. And, folks, a lot of people think, well, we got years ahead of us, and this is just a kind of a bump on the road for America. And I would advise everybody, no, it's not a bump on the road. It is a cement wall with titanium overlay, and America is about to run right into it, full speed. The Lord has given us some warnings here, and what's interesting, actually, is the eclipse that's coming up on 8/21. Actually, the sun is in Leo with Regulus, the sun and the moon. And Regulus is the king planet representing God the Father. So we got a problem. This is a heavenly sign, and the Lord back in Genesis said that the sun, the moon, and the stars are for signs and seasons. The word seasons means trumpet days, or we could say Jewish and the Lord's feast days that Israel was ordered or commanded to keep. There's 7 of them. And I think we're about to see the last 3 fulfilled. That would be trumpets, atonement, and Passover. Not Passover, but Tabernacles. And I believe the distance between trumpets and atonement are probably 7 years, the time of the last week of Daniel. Everything is lining up for it. Everything. And 923's been in the movies, as you know, the cartoons, everywhere. Back in 2015 and 2014, everybody was pointing to a 923. Well, I just watched Deja Vu with Denzel Washington the other night, and guess what? In that movie also, there's a clock that appears, 923, exactly 923. And that clock appears just before a major terror attack, of which he's an FBI agent. He plays an FBI agent in that movie. But that clock appears just before the terrorist attack. They take out a ferry, but he stops it. But this is amazing how they're putting this everywhere, and so people should be really asking why. What are the elite who have spent billions, probably by now, on all of this? Why are they doing it? Obviously, the occult feels something of major importance is coming on that date. And yet, I guess most people just poo-poo it and think, well, there's nothing to it, you know. What me worry, Alfred E. Newman type thing. But if they topple Trump, a lot of things can happen real fast, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's something I was going to bring up, too. You know, I talked to you earlier today, and you told me about Deja Vu, and I watched that movie. I didn't remember seeing the clock with 923, but, you know, I believe you in that. But a little later, I was reading a new book that came out. You know, Tom Clancy passed away a few years back, and he had a lot of knowledge. And some people have been writing some books in his name since then, and I've kept up with it. They're pretty sharp guys, and they're using some of his data. But I want to read you something out of this book, because you remember in Deja Vu, one of the ways they tried to change the future, or where this was going, this terror attack, was to make adjustments in the past, and they started that by sending notes back in time to change the future. Well, let me read you something here really interesting in this book. It just came out. It's a Tom Clancy novel by Mike Madden, and it just came out a few days ago, actually, called Point of Contact. And in this, basically they're studying some new technology that's super secret, and they call it, he said in quantum cryptography, I guess you would say, quantum cryptography. Is the defense countermeasure against cyberware. And then listen to this terminology. It says experiments that demonstrate how you can change the state of one entangled particle in the future, and it will change the state of a particle in the past, even after the first one has been destroyed. And they said Einstein called it spooky science. Then they began to talk about China had launched a satellite into space, and it's testing quantum entanglement and quantum teleportation, but not particularly teleportation of individuals like Star Trek. They're talking about quantum teleportation of messages or messaging, instantaneous communications in a new quantum level. And then we're aware, Stuart, of the AI that there's been so much warning about. You know, something of this technological degree, AI would almost have to be involved. And Augusto tried to share, he didn't have the time, but he tried to share where he's already found evidence, solid evidence of some tampering of the Word of God, you know, that has changed the future wording from the past wording. So there is something very incredible going on.
Well, if I recall right, didn't Stan Dale say they were working on time travel?
Oh yeah. He talked to me about time travel experiments, and some of them he witnessed, and that was years ago. That was even when he was just after he came to America from Australia. I mean, this is years ago.
Well, if you remember back with Deja Vu, first they sent a note. But did you take a look at the machine that they were using? It's almost identical to CERN.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So it makes you wonder, how much more have they done than they're not telling about? And now we've had pictures show up, and I've seen some of them. You don't know whether they've been fixed or not, but they don't look like they have. Of people that are, how do I say, out of place with the picture of the time that it was taken.
Uh-huh.
Their outfit, the clothing they're wearing, their haircut they have doesn't match with what's around them. And so it does make you wonder. I know we have a lot of cases, actually, very famous ones, actually, of people disappearing, vanishing. Are they in kind of some sort of a time flux? So if they can unlock this and if they can figure it out, I can't imagine the Lord allowing them, how do I word this, to alter to any great degree. Because if they could, then the biblical prophecies, which Jesus himself said had to be fulfilled to the dot and the tittle. So that means they cannot be altered at all. So there's got to be some mechanism or means that the Lord uses to prevent any major change that would alter the prophetic utterances of both the old and the new prophets. What do you think? I mean, I would think that would have to be a virtual no-no.
I would think that there would be limitations on what they're able to do, and probably, as down through time, a lot of events have occurred by the enemy because of the fact that the Lord allowed it, and Creator allowed those things to occur. And on the other hand, remember we had Barry Rothman on, recently, and he talked about, remember that classic situation of a message from the future. Not only is it in the Torah codes, he actually had some evidence and data about the whole situation. And when he told it on our show, he came under attack. And the next day, my computer was hit, and I think you had phone troubles. Yeah. And then I talked to Barry, and they brought down both of his websites.
Well, there's some of this stuff they don't want people to know about, but I don't think they can alter it very far. Otherwise, the time schedules of the Lord would not work, and definitely they are working right to it seems like almost to the hour. And with this thing coming up, the way it seems to be working, it's kind of interesting. A guy wrote a short article, said the ancient Greeks believed eclipses occurred when the gods were angry with humans, and the Babylonians believed it signified the death of a ruler. I thought that was very interesting, because we are modern Babylon, whether people believe it or not, doesn't really matter. We are Babylon, modern Babylon the Great. So I wonder if that concept, wherever they got that concept from, is going to apply. What's the deal with the Congress and the impeachment of Obama? Now, I heard you say 6 votes short, but could they round up those 6 votes pretty fast?
Well, it's, we don't know. It's ironic that they're 6 votes away from impeaching Trump, and that's verifiable, by the way. And isn't it interesting that they are on vacation during the compilation of all of this data. In other words, they must be, while on vacation, collaborating to bring that many. Yeah,
and maybe they're out of Washington Congress
for a reason. Exactly. And my question is, do they think possibly because the full coup is on at the moment, while they're on vacation, even though vacation appears to be a smokescreen, because they appear to be working their own coup. Congress is working its own coup, Democrat and Republicans, against Trump right now in the face of the American people, and it's a smokescreen. And is it a chance that they're out until September? Do you think possibly they thought maybe Trump wouldn't last till they can come back and impeach him?
Makes you wonder, certainly, doesn't it? Because don't we have more riots coming up? I shouldn't say riots, but that's what they're threatening. I know Boston is a big one, and I think there's a few others. Over here in Minneapolis, if the picture is correct, that came from Sorcher Fall, claims that the Antifa flag was raised over there in the Minneapolis, I think it was a courthouse or government building of some sort. Can you imagine that? They burned up the American flag and rose the communist flag over in Hennepin County, Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Stuart, that when I was trained as a cop many years ago, we learned the difference between someone that would protest or have a what you would call a demonstration of just quietly standing and getting attention, and criminal activity. And criminal activity is not protected by the Constitution of the United States. Of course, we are also understanding now somewhat what Obama meant, and even George Bush, when they were not concerned about the Constitution, and George Bush, remember, just said it's just a piece of paper.
Yes. It was getting in the way, actually. That's why it was just a piece of paper. What about this North Korean? I want to jump over there for a minute, and we'll get back probably to what's going on with Trump. I don't trust Kim at all. And here's from U.S. National News, records. 10,000 North Koreans have been admitted to the United States. Fears many are military sleeper cells preparing to attack. U.S. has issued more than 10,000 visas to North Koreans in the past 20 years, 18 of them this year from March to June. Well, that's not a lot of people. But when you join it in with what's going on down in Venezuela, did you see that Sorcher Fall article of what's really going on in Venezuela? And why Trump maybe threatened military power down there?
Yeah, I already knew that this was going on even without Sorcher. There's been a lot of reports because of the other man under Maduro that is a Syrian that has been bringing in thousands of Syrian and Iranians and filling up Venezuela really with, I guess you could say, soldiers. And, of course, which way you think the soldiers are going to move? Well, we can figure that one out. But,
well, I guess a lot of younger people from the United States are going down there, too, and they're being trained under Antifa flags, and then they're going to be brought back into the United States.
It's probably being funded by George Soros. It's part of the destruction of the United States. I mean, we're about there, folks. You know, I don't know if people understand that or believe it even, but America Babylon has just about run her mile.
Yeah, we've got, Jeremiah and Isaiah both talk about infiltration and of fifth column military operations. They go all over the nation. They settle into towns, villages, smaller cities, big cities, and they're actually military operations. And when the call goes forth, they rise up. And I think we're getting close to that time. When do you think they're really going to start all this? the burning and the riots and probably even killings and it goes hot.
Yeah, it could really be just almost any time. There's a lot of people now that are saying that they believe that Charlottesville was the beginning, that was the kickoff point. That was the false flag. It was the kickoff point for the coup, and it's going to be in the streets now. But when a lot of people will say, well, how did we get to this point? Well, I can tell them exactly how we got. We had Bill Clinton for 8 years, then we had George Bush for 8 years, then we had Barack Obama for 8 years. That's plenty of time to build up what they have created.
Yeah. I guess what some of the people are worried about is that if we get into a skirmish or outright war, a domino from North Korea, that it's just going to spread very, very rapidly all over the world, basically. We've known for some time, according to Jeremiah, that we got sleeper cells that are going to come in, they're already here, to attack us internally. And we have this military exercise over there. It's huge. It's one of the largest military exercises that we ever have. And the United States, I think, is involved in it. South Korea, I don't know who else. And it starts on August 21st, day of the eclipse. And Kimmy the Whiz Kid has always said that was a provocation. And usually he detonates a nuke or fires off a missile or something when they're doing that. So could this thing go hot?
Well, actually, this thing possibly could. We're talking about joint military activities, on the peninsula beginning Monday, and Kim has already threatened devastation if they begin those drills. He said this is war. So, and there's a lot of background noise also been coming out of intel that Kim never did back down. It was never a back down. He went into pause. He has not contemplated putting away his missiles. He is strategically preparing to use them when he's ready.
Well, he's got himself in such a position that I don't see politically how he could back down. Pause would be a good word for that. He's just simply going to wait for the best time. Well, we got that exercise, Homeland Security, FEMA, and I don't know who all's involved in it. It's called Earth X 2017. And that goes into effect on the 23rd of August. So that's only like Wednesday or Thursday of next week. And that's a widespread exercise about catastrophe hitting America of all kinds, EMPs, earthquakes, volcanic activity, severe weather, hurricanes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But why are they timing it tied closely to the eclipse? And speaking about the eclipse, have you heard any news about people going there? I would think this thing would start to mob up already, because of the pathway. There's only, a few cities, geographically speaking, where they would go for the total eclipse. It'd have to be mayhem there. Have you heard anything at all?
Oh, yeah. They're saying they're already having traffic stoppages and blockages in Washington State, Oregon, and, on the West Coast. And they're already, I believe Oregon has already declared a state of emergency. So, yeah, this is happening. And what's interesting is, this is not just space watchers. There's a lot of the occult involved in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because why not take advantage of a good situation? What's the mayor of Chicago used to say that all the time, if you got a good situation. You could cause mayhem right during the eclipse. And, of course, have you heard any more about Yellowstone, by the way? Is that still cooking along? I know a lot of it's closed off to public view as to what's really going on there, but makes you wonder.
It's still active. I mean, we're watching it. Montana, Wyoming. Of course, Oklahoma's having its own. We had one in McAllister, Oklahoma this morning, an earthquake that's not that far from where we're at. And, this is ongoing. It's West Coast and the Yellowstone, it appears. But Stan Deyo's also put out a warning about a possible eruption of 8 volcanoes in California. So, he's got a lot of reports coming out. Matter of fact, I wanted to mention one thing. Times of Israel just posted a new report, and it says that, you were talking about the pivot point here, 923. This just came out. It said Barcelona's chief rabbi, Rabbi Meir Bar-Hin, is warning Jews to return now to Israel. He says Europe is already lost. And so there's a great call for the Jews to return to Israel and escape what's coming, that it's not possible or survivable for the Jews. It appears, I don't know, a lot of people says, well, you can't talk about Islam, but this looks like an Islamic invasion backed by the New World Order.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's what that whole European thing is about. And again, it's probably George Soros funded. Topple Europe and then eventually topple the United States. I mean, Michigan, I can't think of the name of the city right now. I think it's Flint, is basically Islamic now. And, this is all part of that core cities operation. A lot of people are not familiar with it. I don't have the stuff in front of me, but there are a bunch of what they call core cities, and I think it ties directly into a Muslim takeover. The Illuminati are simply using the Islamics to do their dirty work, and then they'll turn on them and kill them as well, which is, standard operation procedure for Illuminati. That's what they do. They use people and then they turn around and kill them. So, getting back to this North Korea and the possibility of a rise, maybe even during the eclipse or soon thereafter, it is well known that North Korea has already sent sleeper cells who arrive in the United States bearing China passports or forged South Korean passports. They are already living among us in peace for now, but their orders are to attack the infrastructure, the electric grids, water supplies, railroads, highway bridges, and tunnels. If commerce gets disrupted by such acts of sabotage, it may not be possible for trucks to even get through and restock food supplies. There's another problem, too, that's even darker. The North Korean sleeper cells likely have weaponized smallpox virus to release here in America. If they were to perpetrate such a biological weapons attack, entire towns would have to go into quarantine for a month or more to halt the spread of that deadly disease. Since we've stopped vaccinating Americans for smallpox back in the 70s, once a quarantine is issued, stores would be closed. There won't be any way to go out or to buy food. Can you imagine a month or more with no food from stores? I mean, it'd be total bedlam, Larry.
Well, I think that's what we've tried to warn people about, and at the same time, we've got reports just coming out of Homeland Security the last couple of weeks about terrorists sending orders to derail trains. If you'll remember, I caught a lot of flack a few years ago when I did a report on the derailers across America being stolen from the railroads. I mean, they got on my butt like crazy because I had let that information leak out into law enforcement, actually. And now all of a sudden, wow, they want to derail our trains. Well, they already got the stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I think they've been practicing for that, because I remember when you first brought that out, it was soon after that trains began to get derailed quite frequently. It made one wonder. They're practicing with them. Anyway.
That's how they work. That's exactly how they
folks,
work.
if you haven't stocked up, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to wish you had, I guess, if you haven't. And water is going to be one of the big items, particularly if the power goes out. If they were to knock out the power just for an experiment for 2 weeks, bedlam would arise in a lot of places. So anyway, here's another headline for you, Larry. Big city war. NATO seeks concepts for waging urban conflict. What do you suppose that's about? Wouldn't be a war over here at America's urban centers, would it?
It certainly could be, actually. You've been warning about our mountain, and you've been warning about this for years, and everybody just mocked and laughed at you. But I think we're about to reach that point.
Yeah, it's coming, and there's no way to stop it. We're going to go through it, and hopefully the Lord will remove his people before it really gets nasty. But there's no absolute proof of that. He does say, pray always that you be worthy to stand before the Son of Man and escape all these things that are to come upon the earth. So you do have a problem, or a promise, I should say, of from the Lord about being removed from major catastrophe. You were talking about these new Bible codes. What's this latest one with the with Barry?
Oh, it's really interesting. August the 17th is the date that he ran the code. The code is entitled, the new matrix is General Robert E. Lee, Slavery, War, and Heather. And, of course, Heather was the woman in Charlottesville that was killed. But here's 10 names, and I'd kind of like your opinion when I'm through reading them, but let me read these 10. Very interesting. Number 1, Robert E. Lee. Number 2, slavery. Number 3, all who go out to war. Number 4, general. Number 5, right. Number 6, Confederate. Number 7, Trump. Number 8, revolution. Number 9, be remembered. Number 10, Heather.
Wow. You could read that 2 ways, couldn't you? You could read that in such a way that the revolution throws the communists back out. But the far right or the very conservative right, if people would really pay attention, like under Reagan and et cetera, they have a tendency to advance the concepts of the New World Order, law and order, and police state more than the Democrats do. So I suppose one could read that either way, and we do have Trump in the White House, and we have all those prophecies. He's going to stay there for a little while. I firmly believe he's got work to do. He's got to get the embassy back to Jerusalem. He's got to get the capital back to Jerusalem, and he's got to get that temple going on the Temple Mount, because that's exactly what Cyrus did, right?
Yeah, you're so right, and that's what's interesting is a lot of the attacking of the. I've heard a number of experts that were talking about attacking the statue, the like Robert E. Lee that was in the code, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Yep.
That is part of a communist coup. That's how they do. They just bring down everything that everything about your past they want to destroy. And even this, you talk about, this is a good one. It says HBO defends Confederate, white supremacist violence and scares after the demonstrators come against Game of Thrones creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, because of a new movie called Confederate that's about to come out from HBO. So they're even attacking semi-fiction historical movies that are being produced. I mean, it's like they have lost their minds, and maybe they have.
Maybe it's deliberate. You know, if you push somebody too far, there's a reaction. And the reaction really can steamroll right over the people that did the pushing. It's kind of like a pendulum. They say when it swings to the far, far right, for example, it'll then swing to the far, far left, which is Obama. Now, maybe it's going to swing back to the right. I keep looking at Trump, and I don't see any moves to curtail the police state or even stop chipping of people. In fact, there's some articles I found on, well, you know about the chipping in here in Wisconsin, that company that's going to start chipping people, or I guess already has.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it makes you wonder, because the only way you're going to figure out who's who in this country, ultimately, is to mark them. Develop, what do you say, dossiers on them. You know, profiles. Kind of like what they did with Tom Cruise. What was that movie? Where...
Oh,
I can't remember the name of it. Oh, Minority Report.
Minority Report, that's right, where they actually arrested people for thought crimes.
Well, we are moving kind of in that direction. It's amazing how foresightful, I guess you could say, that movie was. Because we are definitely moving in that direction. The Bible says we're going to all be chipped. And if you refuse to chip, you're probably going to get beheaded or whatever. But not a good sign for the future. And everybody's saying, well, you know, Obama's going to come in, which I believe he is, but he may not. Who knows how this is actually going to play out. Did you see the headline, North Korea nuclear warning, UK told to prepare for World War III immediately? Huh.
Yeah, I was wondering what that's about, where that data came from.
Yeah, I can't vet it. I don't know. I mean, he could strike at any time. And, you know, everybody poo-poos his ability. I think that's a big mistake. I really believe that's probably not the smartest move in the world. Never underestimate your enemy, and he is definitely an enemy. And I think they're way underestimating him. And I think they're underestimating Putin, too. The deep state wants this war, but I think they're playing with the wrong guy. Have you heard any more about Putin's moves militarily? Obviously, he's not withdrawing his troops.
Oh, no. He's, matter of fact, he's put a lot of mercenaries in Syria, and he's got a lot of his forces. He's moving them to the Baltic states and like Poland and Lithuania, you know, those different states along the Baltics. Of course, NATO is trying to confront him at the time, but he's about to move 100,000 or more, and including tank forces up in that region. And from the data that's coming out of the people that seem to be watching this strategy, they say what he's moving in, he doesn't appear to be going to move back out. So is he about to move into NATO? Is he coming against NATO? You remember the Tom Clancy novel, Red Storm Rising? It's a classic. It's an old book, but this seems to be the playbook Putin's playing by at the moment.
Well, you know, we're in the process of being destabilized internally, and of course that leads to generally a outside attack. Here's another headline: a domestic destabilization is underway. The left is fueling and funding tensions in order to exacerbate them and cause a revolution. So we probably are headed for a revolution, I believe, because then the deep state can come forward and say, "Look at all the problems you've had. We've got to solve this, and there's only one way to do it. We'll scrap the Constitution and take away your rights, and we'll give them back as soon as we've got everything stabilized." And if you read the protocols, which they say don't exist but are being fulfilled anyway, it says that they will never, that's what they'll tell the people, but they will never give those rights back.
That's exactly, Stuart, what Augusto Perez says. He heard in Cuba that they were going to change things for a short time, but he said it never came back. Cuba never reverted back to any freedoms.
What's this deal with Hannity and his tweets? Have you watched any of those? Where he's tweeting?
Well,
yeah,
I was going to say that there seems to be a war ongoing within, Fox News itself, that they're purging a lot of Trump supporters. People that are Fox News people that support Trump are being purged by all kind of accusations and innuendos. It's almost like, everybody that supports Trump is Russian collusionists. And so we're seeing them, it appears though the tweets from Hannity are warnings, the same way we're receiving and have been receiving little code words from Bannon and others. And, of course, the latest on Bannon, Steve Bannon today, since this was his last day in the White House, he indicated that he's now going to be outside the White House fighting the Trump war. So, he's not leaving Trump. He's going outside and fighting on the battlefield. So this whole thing is, I think we're looking at a bigger scenario than we planned. And one thing I did want to bring up, though, it reminds me so much of Anton Johansson, that Norwegian seer, remember, years and years, over 100 years ago, predicted the sinking of the Titanic, predicted World War I and its battle locations and who would win, et cetera, et cetera. He also predicted a future, or in other words, a second American Civil War, where they would break up America into like 3 or 4 nation states.
Wow. Well, here's a tweet from Sean Hannity. Stay tuned. Major, multiple, TikToks, 3 different fronts. Major, patience, pieces are all falling in place. Now, he's got one of the most popular shows going right now, and he's avidly anti-Obama, anti-establishment, and pro Trump. So what do you suppose he's talking about? Here's another one. Radical left, establishment destroy Trump media. Pay close attention. TikTok, coming soon. Best, Sean.
Well, I would have to say, Stuart, I think that they're warnings. I think that you remember, and I hate to drop back on movies, but you remember the movie years ago, Red Dawn. You remember that?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
do you remember the latest one?
Yeah. But the the original one, they gave out code words like the chair is against the wall. They gave out terminology that gave you received a message in just a few letters or words, but they really had a lot of meaning, and they were directing and passing information. And that's what it reminds me of, is that this is a method that they're telling Trump supporters. They're giving them answers ahead of time.
Wow. Well, we know Sean has dined with the president a number of times. So
they're very close, Stuart, and at the same time, the last few months they haven't been able to bring Hannity down because of any corruption, but they have certainly tried to take out his ad people, the people that support his show on Fox News, and he's made a mention a number of times. I may not be here tomorrow, or I may not be here next week, so he knows he's temporary. And I think while he can, he's passing messages. If the people out there, if the American people has the smarts to even read them, and if they read them, can they understand them? I just don't know. I hope so.
Yeah, here's another one of his. Tick-tock, question marks. Many clocks now moving. Patience is a virtue. That's kind of an interesting tweet. And underneath it says the congressman plans to divulge more of what he found directly to President Trump. Then another one, tick-tock, tick-tock. Does Mueller really want to get to the whole truth? So there's something obviously going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
I find those very intriguing tweets, I guess. Here's a warning, too. Elite banker jumps from the London Stock Exchange building with a chilling warning. Now, this occurred on August 16th, just a couple days ago. An elite city banker has killed himself at the London Stock Exchange. The high-level senior investment banker has leapt to his death from a 7th-floor balcony, which is an interesting number, in London Stock Exchange building. He was pronounced dead at 10:10, but this is what he said. Although he has yet to be named by police, workers described him as one of the bigwigs. According to one of the witnesses, he ran along the walkway shouting and put one hand on the glass wall and jumped over it with both feet. He didn't even hesitate. He was shouting, "The end is coming. Get out while you still can." Now, what does that mean? You know, they've been talking about an economic reset possibly coming up right on the 21st. I think Cliff High and the bots have maintained there may be a reset then. So come Monday, you may not even be able to get into your bank. I don't know. But why would a fellow high up in the chain economically, working for, a major facility, shout, "The end is coming. Get out while you still can"? He's got to be talking about a stock market crash.
Huh.
Wow.
That's interesting.
What do you think?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, people need to pay attention to a lot of these warnings.
Yeah, I think they're not, but they're going to wish they had. This thing's going to get really nasty, folks, and it can turn on a dime. And close out. We only got maybe a minute left. Jared Kushner's purchasing 666 building in New York City is connected to Lucent Technologies RFID chip manufacturing. So we got the mark coming, folks, and evidently he owns some of that stuff. Anyway, Larry, thanks for coming on. One last comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Richard Shaw's statement about Ron Wyatt that said the ark will be revealed about the time the mark appears.
Wow, we're awful close, folks. Awful close. Too many numbers, too many things converging all at the same time. So lift up your head because your redemption draws nigh. Thanks, Larry, for coming on. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you next week if the Lord is willing. Good night, everyone.